Sounds good. Hello, hi everyone. I am kicking us off for our afternoon workshop here to talk about the Purple Line and give you some updates as well as getting feedback from the board about kind of the next steps for the project. So before we start, I will just do let's do introductions of the folks who are at the table here for the commissioners, as well as staff and other community partners to introduce themselves. So I'm Mai Chong. I am Ramsey County Commissioner for District 6.
Victoria Reinhardt, District 7.
Mike Rogers, Deputy Director of Public Works for Multimodal Planning.
Stephen Smith, Senior Transportation Planner and Deputy Project Manager of Purple Line.
Brian Isaacson, Director of Public Works.
Joanna Berg, County Manager. Rena Moran, Commissioner, District 4.
Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner, District 2.
Nicole Fredden, Commissioner, District 1. Jennifer Jordan, Manager of the Transit Section for Public Works.
Matt Thompson, Deputy GM, Capital Projects at Metro Transit.
Good afternoon, Fred Lamont, Purple Line Project Manager.
Josh Heider, the Project Control Manager for Purple Line.
Gary Collins, Deputy County Manager of Action Control and Community Investment. Becky Sakura, County Manager. Elaine Becker, Workforce Solutions Director, Incoming County Manager. Julie Wood, Government Relations. Jennifer O'Rourke, Government Relations. Ethan Craig, Engineer for Ramsey County. Reed Chapman, Chief Clerk. Susan Earl, Interim CFO. Lori Reyes, Deputy County Manager of Safety and Justice.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'll kick it off to Director Isaacson, just to help give us a little context on this too. But I would say there's going to be a lot to learn, so feel free to ask questions as we move along. I've already prepped the speakers to say that we will be asking lots of questions along the way, and also that they are coming to us because we are the project funder in this case. So a lot of the planning that has been in place, Ramsey County has been paying for it too. So this is a good time for us to overall get a project status update, as well as some changes in the FTA guidelines that is impacting our project too. So I'll hand it off to Director Isaacson to kick us off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. We're always glad to see you. In Public Works, we frequently like to say that we are here for your detail, interest, and needs, and this is no different. So today, I'll just say at a high level, I'll introduce it as we're here to give you a project status because it's been a while and there's been a lot of change and there's still some things yet to come. At the end of the day, what we're really here for is a choice about which federal program we're pointing towards. We don't need to decide today, but we do need to decide by probably by Thanksgiving. And so we want to give you some information. Staff will walk you through a whole bunch of details around federal programs, the project, the scoring, and all of the various permutations that get us to a point where we choose. But the goal is to have some indication of whether we're choosing to go with one version of a federal transit authority program or another point, because the decisions lead us in somewhat different directions. And so staff will have a lot of detail, and then we'll give you some recommendation about, based on how we see the lay of the land, we'll give you some indication of where we think we should go. But with that, I'll just hand it off to our project folks.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. It's great to be back. I was just trying to think about the last time I was here. It may have been during COVID or pre-COVID. It's been a while. So knowing that means it's been a long time since we've talked to you guys about Purple Line, and there's been a number of commissioner changes since then too. So it's really good to get back in front of you. And Stephen's going to be the detail guy today. He's going to have a lot of detail in here. And I just want to make sure that you understand we're definitely here to answer questions, to go into it, but he's going to try and stay at a high level to help us get through this presentation. As Brian mentioned, there's a lot of things that have changed on the federal side. If we would have been here a couple months ago, we would have said there's one path to victory on this. Now we have multiple paths to victory. And that's where Stephen at the end of this is going to say, this is the one that staff is, after looking at all the information, where we think we should go, and give you guys an opportunity to hear that, give us some feedback on it as well, and let us know if that's the path that is really worth going for, but we'll definitely give you a recommendation on where we are. The decision points do come out at the end of the year. We have to make a decision, as Stephen will get into. The federal government is asking for us to pick one of the paths, whether it's new starts or small starts, so that we can keep this project moving forward to fruition, so that we can get some transformational change on the east side of St. Paul and then north into the northern parts of Ramsey County as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Stephen, and the final piece, just to reiterate what Chair Zhang said, is that we are the funder. That is why we get to make decisions like this. It's a very powerful spot to be in, and we need to make sure we look at the county tax dollars that we have going into this and make sure we're getting the best project we can for them. So with that, Stephen,
All right, thanks.
jump on in.
Thanks, Mike. And again, my name is Stephen Smith. I'm the Deputy Project Manager at Purple Line. Oops. There we go. And so I got it now. Thank you. And so I just wanted to start off with just, it takes a lot of folks to do a project like this. And this is just in recognition of all the folks that it takes to do it. It's multi-agency, there's a lot of consultants, and sometimes you don't get to see all behind the scenes of who's really doing a lot of the work. I'm here to talk to you about it, but there's a lot of folks in the room too as well. Our project controls manager, Josh, is in the back. That he's really the CIG, or the capital investment guru, and I utilize him a lot to help me with these different areas too as well. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I also wanted to just take a brief second to acknowledge that all the great work and from the commissioners. I really appreciate you all really helping us out, champion, and really helping Purple Line continue through. So I just wanted to also send a special thank you, because I know there's a lot of outside of there's a lot of things that you all are focused on, and then on top of Purple Line, I know it's a big lift, so I really appreciate it. So I wanted to say thank you. So today's topics, I only have two topics really to focus on. The first one is what Mike was talking about, is really giving you an overview of the federal guidance that just came out, and its proposed guidance currently right now. But I want to talk about the effects that it has on Purple Line, and really what does that mean to overall to kind of what route do we take with Purple Line. The next one is getting into that discussion part that Mike also pointed out, which is, well, FTA is really looking for some direction related to, well, what path is the project going to take? And so this is a little bit of today's discussion, and I'm going to take you through the details of when I talk about here in the second bullet point, what it means to redesignate as a small starts or continue as a new starts project. I'm going to define what that really means, and I'm also going to define what the new policy guidance is. So as Mike mentioned today, I'm going to have a staff recommendation from Ramsey County staff related to this. But I have to take you through a couple items in order to really lay out what new starts, small starts, what does that really even mean? The capital investment grant program, I will provide an overview of that, and then a project overview as well, and then take you through scope, some schedule, some risk considerations as we talk about what does it really mean, small starts and new starts. I'm gonna start off with the policy guidance. The capital investment grant program is a very large program that's discretionary. There's about probably annual appropriations up to $2 to $2.5 billion in this program. And the funds for it is mostly for light rail, heavy rail, commuter rail, streetcar, and bus rapid transit. And there's a lot of complexity associated to it. There's a lot of, I want to say, hoops to jump through, because there is a lot of hurdles that you have to meet, a lot of requirements that you have to meet. But there's three main categories for this program. It's new starts, small starts, and core capacity. I'm not going to focus on core capacity because that has more to do with if existing bus line is close to its capacity. That's a different program, and you want to extend that capacity. But I'm really going to focus on new starts and small starts and really define what that is. And again, this program is a very old program. You can probably find relics of it going all the way back to the 60s, bringing it all the way up to today. So for context, Metro Transit, we are very familiar with this program. We have a good, Metro Transit has a good success rate associated to it. So in past projects, there's been the green line, blue line, and orange line. current projects are green line, blue line, gold line, that's nearing completion, F line, and then us purple line. And then I also kind of designated what type of program they're in too as well by the initials of NS and SS. But another thing I want to point out, nationwide, this is a very well used program. Yeah, as you can see, there's about 65 projects that was in the pipeline as of September 2023. And I don't know the exact number today, but it's just really to point out that there's a lot of projects that utilize this program. So I'm going a little bit more detail on, well, what is small starts and what is the new starts thing that you're talking about? So in terms of new starts, the project cost is usually greater than $400 million. That's the overall cost. And you're asking for typically greater than $150 million from the federal government. When you look at the steps, there's 3 steps to it. There's project development, there's engineering, and the full funding grant agreement. That first step is typically a 2-year PD, a 2-year deadline that the government sets. PD, project development. Sorry about that. And I will get into a little bit more detail related to the 1-year extension because we did enter into the program in December or in October of 2021. So I will get into a little bit more detail about the 1-year extension. But in terms of small starts, the process is a little bit different. The cost is typically under $400 million, and you're asking from the federal government upwards to $150 million. The process for small starts is this project development, but really what that is taking you all the way through 100% design. And that's what engineering up top, when you look at new starts, it takes you all the way through 100% design. So what project development is in small starts is really combining project development and engineering to one phase. And usually for small starts, the reason why is it's because it's usually a lot more simplistic in nature in terms of being below $400 million. And the new starts that you're familiar with are usually those bigger projects that involves a lot more complexity. So FTA has put in a little bit more guardrails or checkpoints, I would say, related to that process. So that's why it's 3-step versus 2-step.
And just to clarify, for small starts, it's asking for less than $150 million.
Yeah, less than $150 million. Yes. And so in terms of the overall process, each project, regardless if it's new starts or small starts, requires a rating. And I'm showing you, I call this the pie, and this is how FTA views projects and overall has to be rated. I'm not going to focus so much on the pink side, the local financial commitment, because in this region, we're really good about that side of the pie. So I'm not going to focus the discussion on that. But in terms of the blue side, that's where ridership, and you hear us talk about ridership, you hear us talk about color. Those are what really impact the blue side of the pie. And so I'm going to end up talking a little bit more about what that means. But overall, both sides of the pie will have to be a medium overall. You'll see that in a second too as well. So a little bit deeper in terms of the criteria. On the project justification side, everything's weighted equally. And you can see what I was talking about in terms of everything having to be rated overall a medium. So that means that it has to be at least a 3 overall. And so that's just one of the nuances related to the overall criteria being weighted and being scored. Is just that that side of the project justification side will have to overall rate out as a medium. And I'm going to go into, again, more greater detail about, well, what does that mean, the purple line, in terms of what is our current status related to what we think we would be rated as. The cost estimate and funding approach. So right now, for the federal process, they see us as a new starts project that is about $445 million. And they also see that we have committed $39.9 million as Ramsey County to the project. So that's what we are currently in terms of the project development phase currently. And when we overall anticipated that $445 million budget, you can see that we're looking at about almost a 50-50 split between federal funds and Ramsey County funds. So this is what was originally anticipated. And then that top bullet also, I meant to point out that we entered in project development in October 2021. That's when it got switched over to Met Council. So Met Council took over the project in October of 2021. Now I'm gonna give you a brief project overview. So again, under Ramsey County, we led the environmental phase. That was completed in December of 2021. And then we identified the locally preferred alternative back in May of 2017. Switched over to Met Council in October 2021 when they applied into the New Starts program. And we were originally going from Union Depot all the way to White Bear Lake. And I'm going to talk a little bit about project history and how that's changed. The FTA New Starts is a multi-step program, as you can point out, but the project development phase is what I'm really going to focus on, because that's what we're currently in right now, is in the project development phase. But there's a lot of other steps. But within the project development phase, there's a lot of things that you have to complete. You have to complete and have an adopted locally preferred alternative that's in the TPP, or the transportation plan. You have to complete the environmental process. You have to develop a rating, so that rating, that pie chart that I was telling you about, you have to be rated. And you have to complete 30% level of design, and then also have the funding commitment that I was talking about earlier, where we have already committed 39.9, but you would have to end up committing more as part of trying to move through the different steps of the program into entry to engineering. In terms of the evolution of Purple Line, like I said, at one point, we were looking to end the line in the city of White Bear Lake. For a lot of different reasons, they have passed a resolution for Purple Line not to enter into White Bear Lake. From there, the next step was what we call route modification phase 1. We like to use a lot of acronyms. And really what we were trying to do there was trying to figure out, well, now that we can't enter into White Bear Lake, where do we end the line? And so from there, we started that study process, and we figured that we could end the line around Maplewood Transit Center. That's where we could end it, and utilizing the Bruce Central Trail. But from that, we had discussions and engagement with Maplewood, and we ended up going through route modification phase 2. That's the current phase that we're in now, where we're studying what it means to be on White Bear Avenue. And that's because Maplewood didn't like the idea of us utilizing a trail corridor and co-locating it with transit. And so we decided to take a look at another alternative route, which is Maryland and White Bear. That's the lighter pink, and the gray is the Bruce Central Trail. So everything south of Maryland remains the same. So we haven't really, in this phase 2 that we're in, we haven't studied a lot of, or changed a lot of what's south of Maryland. It's really everything north of Maryland, and that's the gray and the light pink. And one of the things that led to that was the commissioners. You all signed a letter supporting us to take a look at White Bear Avenue. And that came out back in March of 2023, and it was read by Commissioner Reinhardt at the Maplewood meeting. And that's really what kickstarted us looking at the White Bear Avenue corridor.
What was it?
Yeah, yes.
What was the
Commissioner
result
Moran.
from that report?
So the result was they supported it, and they supported us looking at a White Bear Avenue, understanding that we need to build up the White Bear Avenue study to be at the same level or near the same level as Bruce Central Trail. We will compare back to Bruce Central Trail and see whether or not which alignment pans out. So we wanted to make sure that we do a good engagement process through that, talk with the public, get feedback from the public, and then ultimately lead to what is our alignment. So should we be on White Bear Avenue, or should we be on Bruce Central Trail?
And that's phase 1, right?
That was
What time is
phase,
it?
that's phase 2 now.
That's phase 2 now.
Yep.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
And I just wanted to, well, I think you had already left when I gave my update, and one of the things that was brought up about, well, at the time in March of 23, every member of the city council expressed great support and expressed the need for transit in the area. They just didn't want it on the trail. And so we made that commitment. And at the time said it would take about 18 months. And last night it was 16 months. So, and it's going to be almost exactly 18 months from they have to go through that process again. Because right now, the city of Maplewood has a resolution of, what is it?
Support.
Resolution of support.
Thank you. I don't know why that's so hard for me. I had to do that last night at the city council meeting too. The resolution of support is already on the record for the trail option. And and it goes to White Bear Lake. So I mean, that has to be adjusted no matter what.
So the trail options is back on the table.
No, it they didn't take it off the table
Oh, okay.
because we couldn't. Otherwise, we would have lost our place in line with the feds. So we can modify it. But because of the support that came from the city of Maplewood before moving forward with it, we spent time and money.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
So a quick overview of Purple Line and where we're at right now related to the study process. The original budget going to White Bear Lake was 444, call it $445 million. The current budget of what I'm talking to you about right now is between 370 and 445. Assuming that if we ended up on White Bear, that it would be upwards of $445 million. That lower number is really more representative of what it means to be on Bruce Until Trail. So as in context of what I'm talking about today, I'm going to use that higher number, that $445 million of what it means to utilize a White Bear Avenue and a Maryland Avenue and in Maplewood near the transit center. Opening year, we're assuming somewhere in that 2030 timeframe. But there's overall about 11 miles from end to end, upwards up to 22 stations. That's what you see, a lot more dots on the Maryland and White Bear, and that's because that's a city or that's a county road. And ultimately, we want to provide more options because the Brewster Trail, just because it's a trail corridor, has limited options in terms of station locations. So there's a lot more options in terms of transit stops on the Maryland and White Bear Avenue. And then we're still assuming electric bus fleets. And really overall, what we're seeing on Maryland and White Bear is really that 60% BIPOC, the lower income. We're seeing what in the system that Metro Transit sees for their customers too as well. So we really look at this as a great opportunity in terms of when we're studying this, we see a lot of positive outcomes related to that whole transit investment that we're looking at in terms of the county and in terms of what we're really trying to achieve here. So White Bear Avenue has a lot of promise.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to comment that not only did we need to get Maplewood's buy-in to going on White Bear Avenue, but obviously the city of St. Paul. And one of the reasons that at the time that decision was being made to support or not, or to move forward with it, was primarily because of the change in who it was going to serve. And really, when you looked at the trail option, I mean, you had the backyards of people along the line, but that was one of the biggest reasons, I think, and it slows it down just a little bit, but the number of people and businesses and everything that are served is much more on the River Avenue.
Commissioner McGuire?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Remind me, was it gonna take the place of the Bruce Bento Trail, or is this Bruce Bento Trail, is this the one that's in process? It's
No.
not there yet. This.
Yes, no, it's there.
It's there, and
And
it was gonna be next to it? I forget.
When this was actually done before I became a commissioner,
Oh,
where the federal government basically said, okay, you can buy this. I don't remember how, well, I wasn't here, so I don't know, but
Okay.
anyhow, we got it, and it was for the purpose of, we got federal funds.
You want me to jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
thank you.
No, let her
Well,
try.
you weren't
No.
here.
Who wasn't here? But I was in my formative years.
Yes.
When we bought the corridor in the early 90s as a county, the county said, we'll buy this in the early 90s. It came about because BNSF or Burlington Northern at the time said we don't need the corridor anymore.
Wow.
And because we were a rail authority, a regional railroad authority, we had the opportunity per state statute to buy corridors like this to preserve them for a future transportation use. At the time, it was assumed it was going to be light rail, but it was said, until it becomes light rail, let's put a trail in there so it can be used. As studies went on, I met Victoria in the early 2000s when the first rush line studies were done. It was looked at as bus, commuter rail, light rail. Ultimately, we've kept studying and looking at it. And prior to looking at this White Bear alternative as part of the route modifications 2 study, when we were going to go to any use of the Bruce Vento Trail, essentially the trails in the middle of that right of way, it was going to get picked up and moved to the side. And then the guideway or the 2 lanes for the buses would have been put on the other side. So it's a 100-foot wide corridor. It could fit both. It would make a major change to how it looks compared to what it is now, but it could still fit both. So it wasn't an either or decision.
I remember you, giving all these reports all the time, and I'm just obviously looking at it now thinking, hey, how was that gonna go? So,
Well-
because I've been here for a little bit of the conversation.
Well, and I did get involved in 1997, the first year on the board. Because the fact is, there were no signs, there was just a trail. And there were no signs or anything, and we said, well, that's not fair. You know? And so a lot of really contentious community meetings about putting up signs, and the residents actually designed what they would say. So it did say future home of light rail transit. But it was kind of funny because there were a couple of people, one guy in particular said, well, can you just wait until I sell my house and then you can put the sign up? And the fact is, the real estate agents, everybody, I mean, that's what it was. But it was kind of funny, but at least to let people know. Now, fast forward 20 years and people said, well, yeah, I saw the signs, but I didn't believe it. But at least they were there. But it's always been a difficult thing.
And you're right, the people that it's gonna hit on White Bear are way more than the backyards of the people.
And that's, I think, what
Like,
was,
what?
and yes,
Yeah.
it does mean, because initially we did look at White Bear Avenue, but we weren't looking at something that was, it took too much of
Oh, right.
the businesses and stuff. So when you go to the single lane on each side, then you can fit it in the corridor. And so that's how come we were able to come back to that.
I'm going to just move us a little
Thanks.
bit along here. Commissioner Moran.
So for clarity, because we spent a lot of money trying to get the Bruce Vento Trail up. Right? And
That's all
it
we
just,
had.
it's a different vibe, it's a different feel to have a trail and have a light rail right next to it, right? Where are we? Where are we today?
In terms of overall cost.
What doing the project? Is that gonna happen, or are we looking at putting it somewhere else?
Oh, I
So
think the next slide would help us move.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is a great transition point.
Okay,
about,
all right.
Yeah, where we are at.
So that's a
Perfect segue.
So there's and as I move along, really, this is the timeline that we're on related to when we started looking at White Bear Avenue, and we started back in May of 2023, and we're here in August now, and like Commissioner Reinhardt pointed out, 16 months later, we're here and we're getting closer and closer to the point of picking that alignment. And so ultimately, a lot of this discussion is also leading to that too as well today of the recommendation, so we can continue on. In October, we are planning to get to that alignment decision. So we're trying to get to the decision of, should we be on White Bear Avenue or should we be on Bruce Vento Trail? So ultimately, that's what that route modification phase 2, what we're under right now, is really leading towards, is that October date. There's gonna be more after that date, but really the first domino to fall is to try to figure out, as Commissioner Reinhardt pointed out, in the federal process, we look like we're going to White Bear Lake. So we're trying to figure out, well, what does that route really look like? And should it really be on Bruce Vento Trail or White Bear Avenue? So we're getting really, really close to that decision point, which is in October.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, and honestly, even though I said that the city council made the assumption that it would be White Bear Avenue.
I think we can just make that a.
Yeah.
We needed to,
That's
but
what's gonna happen.
one was at 30%. The trail one was at 30%, and we didn't have anything on White Bear Avenue, so that one is now only at 1%, but that's where we had to bring them up
Mhm.
so that we could
And-
say they worked. or
And
not.
their support was for White Bear, not for the Bruce Vento Trail.
No, the support that's there right now is from Maplewood for the trail.
Oh, it is.
It's for the trail.
Oh, wow.
But
But
The
they-
original.
the
but
original,
they're
that's-
not, okay.
That's
but that's,
key.
yeah,
Yeah, but the reason why we ended up
Yeah.
going through this entire study process is because they changed their mind on it. And basically said, okay, we
that's
want, we pre-pandemic, maybe that made a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Post-pandemic, should we be looking at another solution?
Mhm.
And should it really be utilizing a trail corridor? So that's where the Ramsey County letter came in and said, okay, we can take a look at White Bear Avenue again. That Commissioner Reinhardt read to the board
Mhm.
or to the city council.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that comes with a White Bear Avenue is a full reconstruct. That's one of the reasons why it's upwards of $445 million. In order to reconstruct the roadway, we're talking about reconstructing it to the back of sidewalk. On top of that, we have to think about what is the community, what we're hearing from the community, which is in terms of challenges. And so what we're hearing is that it's very fast, it's very difficult to cross. So we're solving for a lot of other things outside of just putting transit there.
The existing road is fast and hard to cross.
An existing road is hard to cross, yeah. And so it comes with a price tag that's a little bit higher, but it's a great investment. We see it as a transformative transformation to the actual community. We hear good things related to our engagement related to this idea. So, but the reason why I pointed this out, because I want you to be able to visually kind of see what it could look like. There's other options that we're looking at. So I'm only showing you one option right now. That's a visualization. But I guess the main point is just showing you what that transit investment, what the overall reconstruction looks like related to White Bear. And again, I want to point out that we're only at 1% design. So this is only a visualization.
What's the visualization if
McGuire?
it was Bruce Vento Trails?
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't bring that one because I was more focused on White Bear Avenue, which I now regret. I wish I would have brought it, but
We can get some of those
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Commissioner
And,
McGuire?
you know, because we're all about, biking, walking and other forms, because we have the Bruce Vento Trail not far, we were expecting bikers to go there, but is that a bike walk trail as well?
No,
On-
and,
Okay,
Commissioner, one of the things that Commissioner Reinhardt pointed out is that this is very narrow.
yeah,
And
Okay.
so we're really trying to fit a lot in one spot, with limiting property impacts.
And-
There's some property impacts, of course, but we're really trying not to, as Commissioner Reinhardt pointed out, take all the businesses, right?
Right.
That we don't want to
Well,
impact everything.
and to be fair, well, I'm a biker, so you want to bike on the Bruce Vento Trail, you don't need to bike on White Bear Avenue. We'll tell all the bikers that. I'll work with them.
Okay.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. You know what you're doing.
Well, and right
I
now,
know. As I fight for biking and walking on every street, yeah, no.
sidewalks,
Yeah, there's.
sidewalk
Commissioner
improvements there.
okay.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Commissioner Reinhardt has
Right,
comments.
I like that. Anyhow, but the sidewalks, because he said to the inside of the sidewalk. Right now, I don't know that you'd really want to walk.
They're not in the greatest shape.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so at least, even though it's meant for walkers, that is still an improvement
Oh, yeah,
for all
so
abilities.
that'll still be a
Yes.
sidewalk. Oh,
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
it'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
actually one that you can walk on.
Yeah, perfect, okay, and the bikers can go to Bruce Vento.
So I'm getting closer and closer to the punchline.
Okay.
No, we want the
As
best
Mike pointed
suggestions.
out, I was gonna go into a little detail because I wanted to give you more background related to why the recommendation is what it is. The extension, so I mentioned that we're in a 2-year time period and that we needed a 1-year extension. And it's because we didn't meet all the requirements that were needed, and that's because of the route modification studies. We needed more time. So we didn't end up asking FTA for a 1-year extension. That 1-year extension ends on December 9th, 2024. That's one of the reasons why FTA is wondering, well, where are you really headed? Where are you going with this? So coming back to that is just, again, that decision tree of, well, what does it mean to be new starts? What does it mean to be small starts? And you mentioned that you're at $445 million, but you mentioned that small starts is under $400 million. So at the end of the day, what is the funding impact to Ramsey County? So I want to start taking you through that in a second. But I also want to let you know that under the current guidance, that we do not qualify as a new starts project. So when we look at the rating and we look at how we rate out under this new corridor, we will not qualify as a new starts project. We would qualify as a small starts project. So there's a little punchline, but there's some
Wait,
light
wait,
on the
there's
other
more.
side.
It's like, why are we even thinking about it then?
We'll get there.
There's
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, I think you already know the punchline.
Like a
So,
romance
for it.
novel.
yeah, so the CIG or the capital investment program, the proposed guidance came out on April 5th. And the funny thing is I gave a presentation on April 4th about why we should be in small starts, but that's another story. But new guidance came out and it's really to do all those lines on the bullet. It's to streamline the process, increase transparency, addressing policy priorities. And what the sponsors are saying is that we would like for you to get this guidance in place as soon as possible because it's good and it's good for a lot of the projects. And so they're hoping to get it in place by either late 2024 or early 2025. But I'm going to talk a little bit about risks later on in the presentation about that. But these are the three areas that really helped Purple Line. At the end of the day, the guidance is good, really good for Purple Line, opens up more opportunities for us. Punchline, it means that New Starts is back on the table. So that's really good. And so these are the three areas that we really see a lot of changes in. So mobility improvements, they place more emphasis on zero car households, cost effectiveness. They do a better job recognizing that we are in a post-pandemic world and things cost more. And then environmental benefits, bottom line there is that we always did pretty good in environmental benefits, but they updated it to new data points. And so we do even better now. So, and this is really the reason why we're able to talk about New Starts today. It's because of the new proposed guidance. And this is a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go too far into the weeds in this, but in terms of mobility improvements, it really, these are the main things they look at, which is, you know, ridership. So it's like, who are your non-transit riders? Who are your transit dependent riders? And they really put more weight and emphasis in that. So that's one of the reasons why we qualify now is we received a big bump in mobility improvements. And then cost effectiveness is better now, again, for recognizing we're in a post-pandemic world. Environmental benefits, they go through and they really updated it. So it really has to do with monetizing emissions and other things too as well. And then congestion relief, which doesn't really change for us, but it's just so you guys know, it's related to new transit trips in the corridor. So in terms of our rating, I remember I said our current guidance, under current guidance, we're medium low. We do not qualify as a New Starts project, but under proposed guidance, we get that medium. And we're not just a medium, we're a very comfortable medium. We're not on the threshold or on the edge. So I guess that's the bottom line of that. So that's very good for Purple Line. I'm gonna talk a little bit about schedule. Design is really driving our schedule right now. It's the main driver. There's no major schedule differences between New Starts and small starts. But for New Starts, it does mean something because I showed you earlier that we're really going to, if we decide to be a New Starts project, we're going to exceed that that date, that extension date, which is December 9th, coming around the corner.
Stephen, just go back to the New Starts rating. So is this comparing the White Bear Maryland route or the Bruce Bentel Trail?
So that's a good question, Madam Chair. It's comparing White Bear Avenue. So under White Bear Avenue, assuming that that is the corridor, the current guidance would tell us that we're not able to qualify, but the proposed guidance tells us that we would.
Okay, and then how would the Bruce Bentel Trail rate on this one?
The Bruce Bentel Trail would, under proposed guidance, would be a medium as well.
Okay.
So it would rate out.
Thank you.
And so in terms of New Starts, because we would end up exceeding that deadline, I'm going to go into more detail what it means to be out of the program. But basically, overall, we would not meet all the different requirements when I was talking about amending the TPP or doing our environmental process. All that would have to be redone under looking at a new alternative or new alignment, so meaning White Bear Avenue. So we would still need to do a lot of other things like complete our environmental process, amend the TPP, complete 30% design. Then we can request into engineering. So under New Starts, that means that we would be out of the program for upwards up to 18 months, or maybe even a little bit beyond. So there's some risk associated to what it means to be out of the program, and I'm going to explain that to you too as well. And then I guess the bottom line for the last bullet point would be underneath this new schedule, we could see ourselves beginning service as late as 2030. So it takes some time to go through design, takes some time to go through construction. So it would end at around 2030 as of right now. These projects take a long time. That's why I thank you for all your support at the very beginning. So we built up some cost scenarios for you, so you can get a better flavor for what small starts and new starts really mean. So again, you're capped at $150 million under small starts in terms of the federal funding. All costs above $150 million just means that it's Ramsey County that's going to pay for it. And so one thing that you don't want to be is right at the cusp of $400 million, because that's the cutoff for a small start. So that means that in reality, you want to be somewhere below. Like I said, everything north of Maryland, we're only at 1% design. So there's a lot of unknowns. So that just means that everything would be, it was supposed Ramsey County is a more funding risk. Under new starts, that means that we can share that cost with FTA at 50% approximately. And then everything that is outside of the program, meaning that 18 months that I was talking to you about, the guidance tells us that we have to pay for that 100% locally. So that means that 18 months will be paid for by Ramsey County.
Hold on, Director Isaacson, did you want to add anything? Okay, Commissioner Reinhardt?
No, he just wants to make snarky comments over there.
I feel seen.
I think that this is, the ramifications of this are not just in the dollars there, because the fact of the matter is, we would probably pay more being out for 18 months than we would save by going into the New Starts program. Okay, the small starts, we can't go over 400 million.
Right.
We don't have the timeline crunches that we have with New Starts, can get them right. But we get less money from the federal government. That's the biggest thing. But we also have less requirements from the federal government, which all of those requirements add to the cost of the project as well. Right? Okay. The 18 months, because we're gonna have a project right now under the New Starts program, we've got a project that is $445 million. And even if we did with the other, anyhow, so we've got the $445 million. The 18 months and the difference between, okay, we would get 150 versus 208.
So
I'm sorry, but there's a dollar amount that's associated with that, plus the added cost. So it makes it look like we're gonna lose money by going with New Starts, and that is not the case.
You are correct.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, Commissioner, and so that's why I created this scenario to kind of clear it up related to what is that funding scenario? And so really what this means is that at the bottom line is if we went New Starts, we would basically save $58 million, upwards of $58 million under the New Starts.
If you don't include the costs of waiting 18 months.
So I'm including the cost of waiting 18 months. So
Okay.
I'm gonna take you through the small start scenario, then I'm gonna take you through this New Start scenario. So under the small start scenario, for a $445 million project, we have to define what the project is under the federal guidance. So that means that $365 million is the federal project, and I have another graphic to show that. And then $80 million would be out-of-pocket costs associated to making the project whole, meaning all the infrastructure, all the changes that we're talking about to make that $445 million project. We see that from Ramsey County's perspective as something that we really value and the community value. So we want to keep the project whole. In order to do that, that means that Ramsey County will have to pay $80 million out of pocket to support it. And then, so overall, the federal contribution would be $150 million. The local contribution would be $295 million. Now, under New Starts, now we're able to take the project and make that a 50-50, almost a 50-50 split. But while we're out of the program, Ramsey County has to pay for that. We anticipate that would be about $1 million a month, about 18 months. That would be about $20 million to Ramsey County. But overall, the FTA portion goes up to $208 million. Ramsey County's portion goes down to $237 million. That's that $58 million delta. So
So just
So-
to jump back on that, Stephen, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
just to be clear, what we're trying to make it a simplified argument and discussion is to say, we're delivering the same project. We just need to say what it would cost the county to go a small starts route, what it would cost the county to go a new starts route. And there is risk with the new starts in that you fall out of the program and have to reapply to get in, but the reward is roughly $60 million in additional federal funds that we don't then have to come up with that as locally. The small starts route is you never fall out of the program, but you're going to pay more local money to deliver the same $445 million project.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Okay, so what is the dollar amount that is associated with the extra? The extra requirements, the reporting, all of that, is there any,
So the
is there a
yellow,
value on that?
so that yellow bar on the New Start side represents what it means to do all that work outside of the program. When we fall out of the program, we take about $20 million of work to get back into the program.
Okay, I thought that there were additional requirements, say that we're doing them at the same time, that there were additional requirements that raised the cost of the new starts.
It would be we still have.
Don't have any additional requirements, reporting, anything you gotta go through?
It's not,
Okay.
nothing additional, I would say.
Okay, then what I wanna say is this. 18 months isn't just about the calendar, it is about elections. If we had gotten this done sooner, we would have a project started already. It was because of elections. And what happened with that, plus the cost of inflation, which is, I don't know if that's factored in here. Well, it isn't because it's 445. The cost of inflation in getting this project done and the odds of getting it done, waiting that 18 months. It's not, if we want a project, and I believe that the recommendation that went to the Corridor Management Committee and that they approved was to go with small starts. Even though it was gonna cost more in the end, it wouldn't, the maximum difference it's gonna be is 58 million, and it's probably not gonna be that much because of the cost of inflation and all of the other things that go into it by doing the project 18 months earlier. But mostly it's about the political will. I mean, the fact of the matter is the city of Maplewood passed the resolution of support for the Bruce Vento Trail. And what happened? And it was passed at the city of White Bear Lake. What happened? An election. That's what happened, and everything went out the window. So please, don't look at this as just dollars and cents, because I mean, I'm not saying that, $60 million is nothing, believe me. But if you want a project and you want to, and I don't think the delta is that much if you add in other things. You wait 18 months and you might as well forget it. You don't have to worry about the money, and everything that we have spent is gone for nothing.
Director Isaacson.
I just want to clarify, make sure I'm understanding you, Commissioner. Are you saying the delay puts us inside or outside the current election circumstance we're in?
18 months will put us outside of where we're at right now.
So an unknown.
Well, I can tell you this, I don't see any scenario under which Maplewood says, gee, I think we should go up Bruce Vento Trail. And if they are not gonna do that, and even now, there's some pushback
Sure.
about, do we really even need it? If we got somebody else in there that wasn't a believer in transit, it'd be gone. I mean, in White Bear Lake, the difference between Bruce Vento or the Purple Line going to White Bear Lake and not, 72 votes. That's what put this, not only did they not want it to come, it can't even come in the city limits. Because of 72 votes.
Just a minute, Commissioner McGuire, did you have a?
Yeah, well,
something to
I
add
was
to
gonna
this?
ask you sort of a similar question about elections having an impact. I was thinking more of the federal elections on whether this money was still gonna be available. If we get out of program for 18 months, I'm a little nervous now. We're gonna definitely know more in November. So when do we have to make this decision?
So-
I mean, well, I just am curious, for the federal elections, we'll know in November, but I'm thinking the city elections, when will we? I
Well,
mean,
we have to make this decision by December 4th, we're gonna be kicked out.
right, but will there be any different city elections in this November? Your cities don't have elections this.
They
fall.
do, not White Bear Lake though.
Okay, I'm just curious,
Maplewood does.
what impact elections may have in all of this,
And
so.
I have some risks, Commissioner, to go
Yeah.
through, because there's definitely risks
Okay, yeah,
associated to both.
okay, let's
I
just
want to
clear
point
that.
out one thing that maybe I didn't point out very clearly. The schedule between new starts and small starts are exactly the same. That doesn't change. When I talk about 18 months outside of the program, we're still doing all the work. That means that Ramsey County is paying for it. It just means that for 18 months, Ramsey County has to pay for it.
It's not
Oh,
that
we're
one
still,
short.
It's
we
not
don't have
that
to
one is shorter.
reapply, we don't have to reapply, we're not out and then we have to work ourselves back in.
No, we do.
We're gonna
For-
stay in,
For small starts, you can redesignate and stay in,
okay,
right? So you're still doing the same work.
Okay, and
You're
you're
still
staying
continuing
in.
on. But for new starts, you, at the December point, you come out, right? But you're still paying for it. You're still
Okay.
doing all the design, all the work,
Right.
and then you reapply back in. So all that,
Reapply-
so all that means is for 18 months, you're paying for
Right.
that time
But you're
out.
reapplying to get back in, so you're
Correct.
relying on,
And if you
on that
don't-
application being accepted again. And was this a tab? No, no, it's a federal,
Correct,
it's federal, it's all
correct.
federal, right?
So,
If we don't get back in, that's money
Lost.
wasted.
Yeah. So that's it, okay, so but you're gonna go through risks.
Yep.
More risks.
So Madam Chair, just to point out in here is just that on small starts, for kind of put a bow on that piece, is just as the scope changes, everything, you maxed out that federal funding. And so that's all exposure to Ramsey County. So it really kind of boils down between these two, what your risk tolerance is. Lower risk somewhat, but more cost to the county, or under new starts, a little bit more risk, less cost to the county. So that's kind of the difference, because now you can split those scope additions with the federal government. So that's just the difference between the two. Scope considerations, again, we're at 1% design. And we need to think about, well, what does that really mean in terms of that $445 million project under small starts? And so does it mean that we have to figure out what to cut? Can we keep it whole? So it really goes down to that last bullet, which is, are we limiting the roadway reconstruction? Are we changing the pavement type? Are we using diesel versus electric? Are we limiting the amount of bus lanes in terms of what we're doing? It really means that we could potentially change what the project really looks like, because we're trying to maintain a cap of $400 million. And we're trying to pay for everything above it, really, too, as well. Under new starts, what that really means is all those scope additions are now split equally with the federal government. That's the part that I was talking about, do you get more bang for your buck under new starts? The risk, now this is what we're all talking about right now, is the risk considerations. Under small starts, we would have to redesignate by October 2024. FTA needs time to review an application to redesignate. They have indicated that as late as October 2024 is when they would like to receive a letter from the project. And then another thing that we have to think about is really item number 3 under small starts. The risk is, we're talking about what Ramsey County can pay for, and we're talking about what is the transit project and what's the non-transit project. But FTA also has to approve that. So FTA has to say that's not essential to the transit project. So as we're talking about it, we really haven't had a chance to talk to the FTA about what does that really mean and define what the project is and what's outside of the project that Ramsey County would pay for. So we don't even know if they would approve everything. That means that maybe we're above $400 million and that's a different project. I mean, a different problem, because they would often say you don't even qualify for small starts because we think everything you define is essential to the transit project and it needs to be part of it. That would balloon you above $400 million. Scope elements that we're currently looking at is, I'm not going to go into great details, the Johnson Parkway Bridge. We're looking at whether or not there should be an at-grade crossing or an actual bridge. That's cost. The Arcade Street location is something that we've been talking about a lot too as well. That's cost. And then because new starts opens up, or the federal guidance opens up new possibilities because it's so good, it also means that could you go to Century College? Could you go to Bandus Heights? Now that is potentially back on the table. Under new starts, what you all pointed out is there is an election cycle coming up. What does that really mean? We know the guidance says that projects can reapply back in, but we don't have really a lot of experience with projects reapplying back in. That's true. We would work with the federal government. We would try to figure out what that means. It's in their guidance for projects to reapply back in, so it's not like it's not there. There is an election that will change the White House potentially, and if it does, what does that mean? How does that affect the guidance? Will the guidance actually go into be finalized in time for when we want to reapply back in? But at the end of the day, you know, again, all those project scope changes can add a little bit more time, can add a little bit more cost, but again, now you're able to split it. And that's where I was talking about a little risk, big reward, lower risk. You can, but it's going to come with a bigger price tag to Ramsey County. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Just before you jump past it, Chair,
Yeah.
Commissioners, one thing that isn't written out here on the risk
Oh,
side,
yeah. Thank you.
but does go over this project as well as things like Riverview, any other transit project that's out there, is the current safety and security situation. And that can help or hurt, depending on how people perceive it, support for transit projects. So that is kind of an overarching thing that's out there, not specific to Purple, but there and impacting.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that the current perception of transit not being safe
What you're
and that it not being secure is undermining support for transit
Mhm.
at various city councils within the population. And that issue needing to be addressed first and foremost is really important to not only maintaining the support we have, but increasing the support for these types of projects.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, I know that you keep saying little risk under new starts. I think it's a huge risk. Because trying to get back into a program after being out for 18 months, which is the requirement, I believe, you can't get in before that. So that's the soonest. With so many changes in the landscape. And quite frankly, if we wait another 18 months, this project won't happen.
Can we move on to the next slide? Commissioner Reinhardt, I hear you on that concern, which is very valid. I want to go to this part here in terms of like, as we're thinking about that timeline of when that would be very, become a very big risk for the changes in elections.
Okay, so for the upcoming decisions and milestones, one of the key things that we would need is a locally preferred alternative. And really what we're trying to figure out is alignment. And that is a decision that's coming in October of 2024 to the CMC, whether or not we should be on Bruce Trail or White Bear Avenue. We also need to amend the TPP, and so that involves resolutions of support. Once we have the LPA decision, and that takes time, and we would end up seeking resolutions of support from cities and from Ramsey County around that winter 2024 or spring 2025. Reason why I say between winter or spring is because of the election cycle, whether or not boards or cities councils want to take up a resolution support. Well, that's why I have a time frame on there. It would be adopted in around that summer 2025 timeframe. And then there would be a public comment period too as well. But for the FTA timeline, again, that clock is ticking, and what that really means is that December 9th, 2024 date. If we decide to want to be redesignate as a small starts, because currently we're in the process of in the system as a new starts project, we need to redesignate in terms of October 2024. That does require action from this board in terms of funding commitment. I mentioned earlier that phase is a longer phase, meaning project development. It goes all the way through 100% design. So then FTA will require that Ramsey County commits the funds for that incomplete phase, and that would need to be done around that October timeframe. And then we would submit all the different bullet points to FTA in order for us to be redesignated as a small starts project. The new starts project path really means that we would reapply into the program 18 months later, after the federal deadline of December 9th, 2024, and then we will reapply back in. But again, all those dollars are Ramsey County dollars while we're outside of the program.
Commissioner Ortega, any thoughts? You want to chime in? No?
I love it.
I'm waiting to see where everybody's at. It's a tough one.
Oh, my God.
It's, with the time element, I personally prefer the new starts, but you bring up good points, Victoria. Hard to argue with.
What, Commissioner, Frello?
So what I'm confused, because what I'm hearing is, it seems like the actual work that's gonna happen, is it gonna change in the next 18 months? What's different is whether we're part of the federal program or not. I'm trying to understand what a city council could do differently in the next 18 months that would make it to pull us out of this project advancing, that would be different whether we were in new starts or small starts. Like, is there something that a city council could do if we weren't in a program versus if we were in small starts to disrupt the program, that they could do in one and not the other?
Commissioner, both small starts, new starts require that resolution of support. So that wouldn't change between if we're in the new starts or small starts.
Is it
program.
just when we need the letter of support would be different?
The letter of support wouldn't really, the resolution of support really wouldn't change in terms of the time frame, because we want to start the start of amending the TPP that says that we're going to White Bear Lake really starts with resolutions of support. And that is about an 8-month time frame to actually go through the entire process of amending that TPP. So the starting point is the resolutions of support, and that comes after we understand our alignment. And so regardless of new starts or small starts, the first question, the first domino is trying to figure out that alignment choice. And then once we have that alignment choice, we can start the resolutions of support too as well.
And what are the costs are there costs to local municipalities difference, or it's all Ramsey County?
It's all Ramsey County.
I guess I'm trying to understand, I understand there's a risk we might not get back into the program. It sounds like from your perspective, that's a relatively small risk based on the new proposed rules and where we would fit in that alignment. In terms of the political risk, what I'm trying to understand, Commissioner Reinhardt, is, I guess, I would see it as more risky if what we're trying to move forward is a project that's gonna have a greater cost to Ramsey County. I feel like that would be more likely to get municipalities to try to justify a way out of it. And if there isn't like a different timeline in how they like try to frame this as a bad project, I think it's more likely to be framed as a bad project if we're paying more for it, especially if we have to cut the scope in some of these ways. I feel like it's more likely that they would do that. And if there isn't like a greater opportunity for them to do that, depending on which federal program we're applying for, to me, I think the new starts makes more sense.
Commissioner Ortega?
Yeah, Nicole covered part of what I was gonna say. The reason I support the new start is because you're looking, you could have amenities to the road that don't have to be high cost necessarily, like landscaping or whatever else, if the county wished. But the other thing is, with small starts, you are in a mode where you gotta fit in within that budget, so you start cutting. And then you got a question is, is that price tag worth what you're getting? In terms of the service. But there are the realities you brought up,
sorry.
Victoria. I
It's
am
a
not,
non-project if we
Yeah.
change this.
well,
I
yeah,
That's fine, I can
you-
walk away from it.
So, 18 months out of the project, means we reapply to be in, we keep doing everything we're doing. Then so nobody really, it's not gonna matter, our cities aren't gonna feel any different, no one's gonna feel any different, we're just gonna keep plugging along. Hoping we get to be back in so that it will get paid for, because if it doesn't get paid for, then it is dead. And we've put a lot more how much more money would we have put in before it's dead?
Altogether,
18 months.
probably would be upwards of $40 million, if not
Okay,
more.
and how much
Or
have we put in now
upwards.
versus the 18 months? Well, how much would we have put in that 18 months?
Well, the 18 months, probably about $20 million
Okay.
of costs.
So we would put in 20 million more on hoping that we get back into the program, and there's some ifs there. As far as political, and you said we don't have a lot of experience reapplying to get back in. What do you think our chances are in any of your experience of reapplying and getting back in a program?
I can, maybe if Josh, if you want to try to answer that. one.
Anybody have any sense?
So.
All right.
We're not gonna hold you to it. We're just curious what your sense is.
I think we've got a really good shot of getting back in if a particular election outcome occurs in
Yeah.
November. I think if the other outcome occurs, that is definitely a risk. We know from the previous time that administration was in place, they were not friendly to this program. They weren't friendly to any discretionary programs,
Right,
not just CIG, but all discretionary.
Okay,
And so they attempted to go after this program. They were unsuccessful in getting rid of it or reallocating the funds, but they did slow pedal things. And so there's certain things that have to occur by federal statute. Like, for example, when you get entry into project development, you have to have a yay or nay within 45 days. Previous time this was in place, they were able to double that time frame, but they ultimately had to let projects into the program. But things like this proposed guidance, there's a big push right now by project sponsors across the country to get this in place before any new administration comes into place. That's something that could be buried under a particular administration and then it for not coming out. There's nothing statutorily requiring the federal government to issue the proposed guidance as final. And then the fact of getting into an engineering phase, that's more discretionary. There's no mandate. So again, if a particular administration is in place, that could be at risk. But I think if it's the other administration, I don't know that the risk is high at all.
And one thing I want to add to that is this 18 months is what we're talking about in terms of the time frame. It could be a little bit longer. The risk is scope elements getting added, that adds more time. That's certainly a risk. So it definitely could be longer, especially if it's interest to the county to say that under New Stars, we should take a look at Bandit Heights or Century College and what does that really mean? So that would be longer than, it would add more time to it certainly. But at the end of the day, 18 months, that means that is the guidance in place in 18 months, really. Or what it means is that we will reapply back in as a small start. So that means that everything that you've been doing outside of the program won't be matched, but you could, worst case scenario, reply back in as a small starts, because that's what I told you that we will qualify under too as well. So under current guidance, if the new guidance doesn't go in place.
I just want to say that I'm totally respecting Victoria's concerns over this, and she represents these communities too. So the communities, though, once they agree, I'm trying to think where they're at with small and new starts. They approve this, can they not approve, once we get one of these programs, then can the communities come in and change it and change their minds again, or no?
So the program, Commissioner, the program is really, Met Council and Purple Line really looking for us as we're the ones that are funding the project, for feedback on this. And, so it's not the cities, it's really us, as the funding partner, really trying to figure out what's the best program to
What's
be
the
in.
best program, but we need the city to approve it, right?
We'll go to,
Okay, then,
yeah,
yeah,
or take and then.
okay.
Well, we need municipal consent.
Yeah,
We will, regardless of what we spend. At the end of the day, we'll need municipal consent.
right.
I just want to say that, my preference is for New Start, but I certainly respect, you're right, Victoria represents the area. And I certainly will go with it. I mean, I am not opposed to the small starts. If that's the path,
I mean, I don't.
but I did, my preference, I tend to, I like communities to go first class, so I don't, and that's what New Starts represents to me. So I'd rather spend the extra dollar, but that's all in political realities. And I respect that too.
I just want to add to that, to Commissioner Ortega's point, is that that is what I hear from like my community in St. Paul, right, on the east side of St. Paul. They're like, if we can't get a nice project that we like, we don't want to support a project here at all. So I would say that also makes a big difference, as I'm considering this, and also to be able to leverage more federal funds. But, yeah. Commissioner.
If I had-
Reinhardt.
I have a
If
question
I-
too.
If it was what I really want, I would go with New Starts. If it's what we can possibly get, it's Small Starts. And the reason is, okay, so we have a resolution of support on the record from the city of White Bear Lake. It's still there. And I asked Chair Zelli at the time, I said, are you gonna back us 100%? Are you gonna go with this? Because they've already said it, the previous council? Absolutely. Not so much. Is really what it came down to. Because even though they don't have to do a letter, they can put up roadblocks, and that's exactly what White Bear Lake did. And they backed down. The council backed down because they didn't want to go into this project, knowing that a city was going to cause all kinds of issues. They really, it's not just a letter of support and then you walk away from it. They really want to know that the support is there. Because the Met Council is putting itself on the line. And what White Bear Lake did was first of all, they did another resolution, but that didn't take away the letter that was there, the resolution of support. But what they did was they said, okay, you need to come onto our property. Odds are we have to come onto property that isn't owned by Ramsey County. In fact, we know we do. And so they said, well, then this is gonna cost you this much, and we have the right to tell you can't come on our property. So there's all kinds of things that play into this. And I've been doing this, I mean, this is 27 years of working on this project. And and it's not gonna be a lower class project. And maybe there won't be some bells and whistles to it, but who knows what's gonna end up happening with the other one either. So, it all sounds great on paper, but when you talk about the risk of what's gonna happen in reality, if we want a project, we should go with Small Starts. If we don't, then go with New Starts, and maybe, the God's willing, you'll get something. I'm telling you the truth. This is where it's at.
So that's Commissioner Moran.
You
You've
got
been waiting for a while.
something to
Go ahead.
So I just want to say that you've been on this for 27 years. It's your community, you have conversation, you know, all the political dynamics that's happening here. Politics will play up and it won't happen, I'm going to abstain because I don't know what to do. So whatever you want to do. But this is my question. I'm going to transition a little bit because I have some questions on slide 12, 11. Yeah, 12. Because for me, this is all about cost. So I want to go to the cost part right here. It's better understand what we are paying, right? Because we keep on saying Ramsey County, but the note says it's a combination of Ramsey County and Ramsey County Regional Rail Authority funding. I need to know the difference between the two and how much are you asking Ramsey County to pay for on taxpayers, right? And then how much of this is coming from Ramsey County Regional Railroad Authority, and are they different?
I'm gonna let Mike take that one.
Sure. Yes, they are different.
Okay,
So the Ramsey County Rail Authority funding comes through the levy that the Rail Authority currently imposes. So that money is where that comes from. The exact amount that comes from the Rail Authority is one of the things we do in our financial analysis, and it fluctuates based on how much money Gold Line costs or how much money Riverview costs. And the reason it fluctuates, to dive just slightly in, is because state statute limits the amount of money you can spend on rail projects from the rail levy. And because Riverview is a streetcar, you're limited to how much rail levy can pay for that project. So the other part, the county piece of this, is paid for through our sales tax, the 0.5-cent sales tax that we have as a county, and we've had in place in some way, shape, or form since about 2008. So that money has been building. We've been banking it to deliver a project like this. So to deliver Purple Line will not cause an increase in any taxes that are currently in place.
And Rena, that sales tax,
Mhm.
that's when CTIP was in place and the state gave us that authority for transit and transportation.
So this is a set aside dollar amount specifically
Right.
for rail.
Only for
Yes.
this.
Yes.
Okay,
Use for this.
all right, that's good for me.
Commissioner Fathom, and then Reinhardt, and then McGuire.
I guess, Commissioner Reinhardt, have you heard something from Maplewood that suggests they would prefer us to go with small starts over new starts, that they would prefer Ramsey County spend more money for a potentially inferior project? This is what I'm hearing from folks, is that we would have to spend more
Okay,
money
mhm.
and we would get less out of it, and I don't understand why that, that Maplewood would rather support that.
Well, if we put it that way, of course not.
Well, that's what I want, like, what have they said specifically that suggests there's a higher risk politically going with the other one? Like, I understand the
Okay.
administrative and the federal pieces. That makes
It's-
sense to me, but it's,
Okay, I can help you here. It's not about them supporting new starts or small starts. It is, no, because would we all prefer new starts? Absolutely, because of it costing us less and getting more.
Yeah.
But the timing of this and everything that we are doing is so fragile right now that if we don't choose one and stick with it, I think that support, it's touchy right now. If we get that letter of support and we're moving forward with small starts, and we'll get a letter of support on the alignment, it's separate but combined, and we have to have that regardless. The amount of time that it gives them to change their minds. I mean, even in the last 6 months, it is not, when we were there in March of 23, they were like, oh, man, we want to do transit, we want to do it on Whitebear Avenue, we want to do it now. Yeah, not so much anymore.
Mhm.
And now they're going, do we really need transit? So we can wait. But so it's not, if we frame it that way, it's ridiculous, because of course they're not gonna say we want. And I don't, inferior, we're still gonna get a quality project, but the bottom line is this. Okay, let me ask you this question though. You're talking about these new guidelines. Are they final?
Not yet, Commissioner. This is something that Craig even pointed out, that, you know, there's a lot of sponsor pressure to adopt the new guidance. I would just, as Commissioner, as a point that you're making too as well, is just as you think about small starts and new starts, I just, the one thing that I want to point out is just this side of the pie, meaning that everything that is above and beyond that $365 million price tag, every scope change, everything that happens, because we're only at 1% design, is going to be at the cost of Ramsey County, like every.
Okay, you know what? That's fine.
But
We're
but-
gonna lose the project. I am convinced of it.
Hold on a second, so.
So
kind of-
but I'm not gonna be here. So.
Okay, Director Isaac.
I just want to ask a clarifying question, and maybe it's for the three of you. There's a time sensitivity that I'm not clear on. And what I'm hearing you say is that new starts feels like the decision is going to be present and decided quicker. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well,
I'm sorry, small starts, yeah, thank you.
yes.
Can somebody go to the feds and get a different term? The small starts is gonna be a quicker decision, because in my read of this, Maplewood's gonna have to send us a letter of support for the alignment. And within that, that means that they're supporting what we're doing. And I think that that's relatively agnostic as to how it's being paid for. Right?
Yeah.
And so then it's a question of, is there any risk to small starts? And that time sensitivity, I'm just trying to play out where we're at, because I think the point about the proposed guidance, I'm there, right? Because November comes and it's either, it's a lock or it's not, right?
Well, it's not even a lock, I don't.
I think the odds are pretty good.
Okay. Going back to this timeline piece, if we stay in small starts, do we still need a letter of support from
Yes.
the cities?
Yep.
Mhm.
Because the alignment's changing, period.
Okay,
That's what that's for.
Yes.
So that's a common from,
okay,
regardless.
but
of
what I
program.
hear you say is that like, if we do that right now, like within this timeline, that there would be like confirmed support, almost,
I believe that that's what it does say to them.
okay.
Commissioner, one thing I want to point out, or Madam Chair too, as well, is that if small starts is the path that you all want to take, we would have to, as a county, really manage the expectation of the overall scope. Because
Okay.
we would
Yeah,
either
I'm good with one with new starts.
have to figure out how to
It happens, it happens.
make sure that we're either keeping the project whole because we want to deliver all of it, or do you end up cutting elements? So it's just those pieces, but Commissioner, I understand what you're saying. There is
Mhm.
definitely, we don't, it's the unknown of what we don't know related to a new administration, related to if the proposed guidance is going to actually go into effect. There's that
And if we
piece
can
of
get back in.
unknowns. And if we can
Yep.
get back in.
Yep.
Commissioner
So
McGuire.
thanks, Madam Chair, and I'm, yeah, obviously, I think we'd all love to, like, wait on this decision, but doesn't
Thanks.
feel like we can, so we'd all like to say, hey, we need more information, which of course we've all said. We don't know, there's a lot of unknowns, and we're gonna need to sort of make a decision here. Victoria, just so I'm clear, the examples you were using about White Bear, we're not going to White Bear now, because they said no, right? So we're not
Well,
even
we
going
couldn't
to
anyway,
White Bear.
we wouldn't have
Right,
qualified.
we
for
wouldn't,
that.
right, so we're not going there, so that was an example of what a city can do to get in the way of a project. We're hoping Maplewood doesn't do that, because we're not going to White Bear anyway. So, but Maplewood could put roadblocks and do all this if they decide they don't like it, even if they send a letter of support. So we want a community that supports us, so that's an unknown as well, right? Whether they're gonna stay supporting us or not, no matter which program we choose.
Mm,
So to do this project at all is sort of an unknown based on what city politics are out there. And so, and we can't wait until November to make this decision, right? We have to make it in October, right? We can't make the new start, small starts until, we can't wait till after November.
Commissioner, small starts would require us to make a funding commitment at the board level in order for us to make the submittal to FTA.
By
Early
October,
Early
by
October.
October, right, okay. So I just want to make sure I understood that clearly. Okay, so I feel like there's unknowns on all sides, a lot of sides. I don't know what I feel like we should do, except for I was thinking that I really appreciate your concerns, Victoria. I don't know, I feel like there's just concerns everywhere, and so I'm leaning toward, let's just go for
I
the
already said I'm
good
gonna go
project.
with.
Yeah,
new
I know.
starts.
Would
But you know, the
with-
fact of the matter is,
I
the Board of
feel
Management Committee, we just
better.
convinced them not too long ago to go with or small starts.
You,
Right?
who did you
Yeah.
convince?
Commissioner, I explained that the only path that we have is
Oh.
small starts under the current guidance. That was the day after the proposed guidance came out, so. It was just more of an informational item at the CMC level of what we would expect the project to take, because we're not taking the decision to the corridor management, because this is more of a Ramsey County funding kind of conversation, so it won't rise to the table to be a CMC decision.
So can
Part of
you
management
help
committee.
us out, your experience,
Commissioner
your expertise?
Commissioner
Help us
Miranda,
out.
did you have something to add? I feel like you were kind of jumping to.
I just, I think you're right. There's gonna be a million unknowns with this project. I'd rather continue striving for the best project at the lowest cost, which to me says new starts. And I also heard there's also still the potential of maybe looking at Venice Heights, which with new starts.
And
Mhm.
Commissioner, with that, that 18 months that I'm showing would probably be higher, more than likely, than just being outside the program for 18 months, because that would require more engagement. We haven't really engaged Vandus Heights. We haven't really engaged Century College, and I don't even know if it makes a lot of sense yet. And so there's a lot of discovery probably associated to
And then
that.
what I also hear is if it didn't work out to get into new starts, we could still reapply to small starts.
Correct, but every dollar that we spent while outside of the
Yeah.
program would be 100% Ramsey County.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Commissioner-
then, I mean, we've still got a cap on what they can reimburse anyway.
Correct.
Commissioner Moran,
I'm just thinking, can we hear, based on your experience and expertise, what you think, in looking at these two options as, just maybe just fill us in.
I can take a stab at that, Commissioner. So, I've been at this a while. I've seen, as Craig mentioned, there's been multiple changes in administrations. I remember when the Bush administration came in and we're gonna make cost effectiveness a pass fail, and that was their limiter to transit projects. They never got rid of the program. They never had support in Congress to get rid of the program. Trump, same issue. Didn't support the program, but didn't have congressional support to get rid of it, though they did slow walk stuff, which does increase your costs.
Mhm.
When I look at this project and think about where we're at and where we're going, I think Commissioner Reinhardt is right from the standpoint of, you never know where your cities are going to be.
Mhm.
And Maplewood was gun ho with this, that when they passed their original resolution, just like White Bear was as gun ho as you can be at a 3-2 vote to support the corridor going all the way up to White Bear. One election happened, 72 votes. White Bear flips.
Yeah.
This was after the project already
Jeez.
had gotten all its approvals, already was adopted into the regional plan, was ready to go. Had to reevaluate us.
Mhm.
Gold Line had some of the same issues because Lake Elmo pulled out of that project and they had to readjust. So readjusting is not something new. Whether we choose small starts or whether we choose new starts, we're going to have the St. Paul, we're going to have the Maplewood. They can both be super fickle. That's just the way they are. So
Mhm.
that could pop either one, even if they support it now and support it 10 months from now, 12 months from now, they could change their minds.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think the real thing we've got to be willing to say is we want the $445 million project in this scenario. If we say we're going to stay in the program to reduce the federal risk of falling out and having to apply to get back in, then we know as a county, we're going to kick in at least 60 million more dollars that will come out of the rail levy or it will come out of the sales tax. And that's just the decision we've got to make because we're making a commitment. I'm making this assumption that we as a county are making a commitment. We're delivering the Cadillac of projects. And then if we do the new starts, the risk is that you try and deliver it and you don't get back into the program and then you don't have any of the federal money. That's really the difference. But if you don't deliver either project, all the money you've spent to date doesn't get matched and it's just money spent today.
So is that 60 million versus 20?
No,
What's that number?
where I'm getting that, Commissioner, is saying that the 80 million is out of pocket versus the 20 million out of pocket. The $60 million
Mhm.
is what we need to spend to get to the 80 total out of pocket compared to going new starts, which is the 20 out of pocket. So it's the delta between the two out of pocket costs
Okay,
that are unmatchable costs.
on that, yeah.
Director Isaacson, he had a
I'll-
point he wanted to add.
I'll
to it.
follow the commissioner, thanks.
Well, as most people around this table know, I'm a Cadillac woman, so electric.
Okay.
So, and honestly, the biggest thing that concerned me about that whole thing that you just went through
Mhm.
was the possibility of using diesel buses. It's like, no, you're gonna be electric.
Okay.
The fact is, I just came out of a meeting last night with the city of Maplewood
Mhm.
that went well, but it sucked at the same time.
Mhm.
Fair? I don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
Right. And the reason I was there was to remind them of history
Mhm. It's
and
important.
to put the pressure.
Mhm.
So what you're hearing from me today is the fact that I am not at all sure what's gonna happen with Maplewood.
Right.
We might not have any project, because if we don't get that letter of support, the resolution of support for the new alignment, which is kind of crazy, because we have it for the other one, so we could still go forward with that one. But again, it won't happen. But the reality is, that resolution of support is gonna be good for as long as that city council is there. If we can get it, regardless of whether it's new starts or small starts. And so the fewer times that we have to go back to that city council,
The better.
the better. And that's what I viewed as the small starts would be probably this one thing, and then we go back to them to give them updates, but that's it. But then you throw in the 18 months after they've done the resolution of support and maybe new people, or quite frankly, because on this city council, we had the support of this city council
Right.
100%, and then we didn't because of the election, because of the pressure that was put on. And suddenly, a person who thought it was the best thing since sliced bread didn't want it at all. Same person.
They
So
have
I'm
it.
just trying to say, that's what I'm coming off of,
Yeah.
and so if I feel and look emotional, I am, because I just went through that last night. And this is not an easy thing to do, it's not something that you just go, oh, well, we'll just change this, and
No.
and every moment that we give them a chance
Right.
to come back, and it's not that they shouldn't have that, I mean, we've got all kinds of community engagement built into however we do this project, none of that changes. And so I did say, and I really meant that I will go with New Starts. I actually thought the corridor management committee took a vote on it, but apparently we didn't. But we're gonna go back, and I think that they will appreciate the New Starts as well. I just hope that it doesn't prolong things. Maybe the same 18 months, but it's not doing the same thing in those 18 months, I don't think. That we don't lose what we need to really make it happen. We don't lose the city of St. Paul, and we don't lose the city of Maplewood. If we lose the city of Maplewood, we have no project. And that's what I was trying to say.
I don't think we'll lose St. Paul.
Don't say
What
that.
you say?
Don't
Don't
say
say
that too
loud.
soon.
Don't say that
Yeah.
loud.
I won't say
That's what I
that.
was-
Yeah.
So I-
Yeah,
I'll throw
and
in
that's the same thing. I mean,
I'll throw in one other comment, and I really do appreciate that this is a complex issue, and there's lots of perspectives here to offer. I'll just say, like, it strikes me that in this context, a lot of these projects, at the end of the day, there's a lot of give and take about what's in the scope and what people want to seek from it. And I'll say St. Paul's desire is to see the road rebuilt.
Okay.
And that's a lot more challenging in an environment we're trying to decide that we have to be under a cap than not. And so I'll just say that that's my lens on it, is that's why I would suggest New Starts is probably the right path. I appreciate all the concerns you got, and I think that the wild cards all over the place here. But I think that we have more of a chance with the two cities in making that negotiation if we're not hamstrung by the total cap. That's my take.
Can I also just take us a little step back about like the conversation that we've had here? I did ask Stephen earlier about like, are we gonna make the final decision here too, you know, and what I heard earlier, was we don't need to make a decision right away, but we do need to make a decision before October.
Probably
Yeah.
6 weeks.
Or September.
Yeah.
Okay, so are
Did
we
we
meeting
make
as a
that?
CMC?
It's so,
Oh.
Madam Chair and Commissioner, since we're the sole locally, funding partner to this, it's left to us. So it's left to us to try to figure out whether or not we want to commit more funding and do the small starts route, or we're willing to do the out of pocket too as well. So it's really up to us. It's really our decision to make.
and none of the work stops.
None of the work stops.
And what about the CMC? When are we meeting again?
CMC, we meet in September, we meet in October, but it wasn't as an info item to the CMC at some point, but it wasn't meant to be a concurrence item at the CMC because it's a sole local funding partner decision.
So do we need a motion?
mean,
at this point?
I'm not sure. Do we need a motion at this point?
So here's my take. If you felt like there's more information that we could provide you that would help you make this decision, we
I
can
think
do
you take
that.
the vote when you got it. But I don't know that we can take a vote here.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm not
You
sure,
know,
I'm not
no,
sure,
we're
there's
not
not
sure.
one thing where I could say, oh, well, you did say the thing and we could get more of the thing. There's not a thing. And so I think that in that sense, that really where we're at is, I think you know as much as you can know.
Yeah.
Absent if we could give you some probability on what the different wild cards are, and I don't think we can do that. So I think I'd say let's pull the trigger today.
Mhm.
I'm just looking, going, is anybody
we-
from Maplewood here?
Yeah.
After everything I've said.
You don't have to make them, yeah.
So we don't
There's
need
not a
to-
motion to
we
make,
don't
there's
need-
not
we
a
don't
vote,
need to
but
do
I think
anything.
But we would
that
maybe,
indicate-
We can
we
take
could have
a
the rail.
consensus.
Stephanie, the direction.
Yeah, the direction.
Stephanie, the
Okay,
direction.
Direction,
And you
okay.
don't get to say like west.
It's a direction.
Oh.
I mean, I think this is, I think this is really good, that we are weighing all these, different perspectives. I would just also add that, you know, we are at 1% design for, our current White Bear, Maryland route. And we are looking upwards of 400 already, right? And I think that just gives me the biggest anxiety around not knowing about the outside sources that would have to pay for the project. And then also if it would even be eligible for small starts, or if it would be a competitive small starts project because of the cost.
The new starts.
No, for
Yeah,
small
small start,
starts,
that's why you
because
go with new
I'm
start.
saying that right now, we are at 1% design and we
Right.
are already looking at.
Oh,
that
okay,
amount.
gotcha.
That's
I
why
thought
you
you
would-
meant.
Yeah, and
That's why
so,
you would
yeah.
It's gonna go up.
New
I
start.
mean,
It's gonna
usually
go up.
projects does.
Cities are doing well.
Yeah,
it's gonna
and,
go
and they will always
To
want more,
support,
right?
right.
And then I just wanted to
Labor
also add
force.
that, you know, the conversations that I've had with St. Paul, even before all of this, was like a consideration for arterial BRT rather than for this. So it's really taking us a lot of like conversations, and they wanted us to keep that option open if we didn't get federal funding. So this is just to share with you all that we never know where the cities are, and also that things will always how long has the project been now?
Are you going
7 years?
before?
95?
Yeah, it's been a very long time.
95?
7 years.
I mean, I think that's just
Well,
something
when we
to
started,
also
it was-
consider, right? Like that really, I feel like people, they argue more about the project of where it's going to be actually, and not where the money is coming from. Yeah, but for us, who are funding this, like that's
We
the
care.
piece that we have to like wrestle with too, right? Like, are we gonna raise the levy on the regional rail authority, right? Or are we gonna max it out? Or, you know,
We're already
or
maxed
use our general fund from the county to pay for these additional things. So those are just things that for us to like consider too. Mhm. Yeah, Commissioner Reinhardt, did you have anything else to say?
Well, I just think that, well, first of all, is this being recorded
Yes.
and is it being broadcast?
Yes, it's regular broadcast.
Okay, I'm going.
Okay.
So what's the next step? What do we need
the
to do? It
general
was good
consensus.
informational, very
General
informational.
is like new starts. Yeah,
Consent, yeah,
Yeah.
we can't take a vote here, right? So we just
But-
give you consensus, that, thank you for all the, I'll just
That's
start,
what you
Madam
took-
Chair,
that's
by
what you
thank
got
you
to
for all
say
the.
too.
just a minute,
Yeah.
too many conversations.
We'll
Commissioner
just
McGuire.
maybe, I'll just say thank you for all the information and with all the unknowns that we continue to have.
Mhm.
And in the hopes that our cities will, you know, be with us on this journey and all the public comment that we're gonna go through and everything we're gonna do, that we will be doing the right thing. And I say we go with the new starts, having all that in consideration, so.
Commissioner Moran, did you?
No, I was just asking, were they also saying New Start would be the direction to go?
That was
Oh,
our recommendation.
That's the
That
staff
would be the
recommendation.
Staff
recommendation.
recommendation,
Yeah.
new start.
Yeah. Commissioner Reinhardt?
And I just needed time to collect my thoughts there,
Okay.
but the fact of the matter is, this will be, even if it was small starts, it would not be an inferior project, and I really don't want people to think
Yeah.
that. It's
Mhm.
just not, because we may end up being there anyway.
Mhm.
Yes.
But it will be a better project.
Yes.
There'll be more amenities, there'll be more things that you can do, further that you can go, whatever all of those things are, and I think that that's all very positive. And so I didn't want people to think that I suddenly didn't want to talk. I just needed to think about how to phrase it, that it is a positive. There are risks associated with it, and I just hope that we can make sure that we've got the questions answered as people go forward.
Mhm.
The city of Maplewood has been an incredible partner with us the whole time, but last night made me nervous.
Understood.
So I just, I'm good with where we're at. Okay.
Thank you. All right, well, I will adjourn. Thank you so much. Great